Hello everyone, this is the Insert Title Show and I'm your host, Wolf Strife. On this episode I'm going to be listing my top 20 favorite video game soundtracks of all time. Now, these won't be in any kind of order just because I didn't feel like rating them. This soundtrack's better than that one. No, fuck you, this soundtrack's better. I just don't want to have that argument with myself, so I'm just putting them out there. These are my favorite video game soundtracks, and, I'm sure right after I post this, I'm going to be like, shit, I should have put that soundtrack in instead of that one. It's madness. So I just want to get it done, get it out there, be done with it. Now, if you have any suggestions of what I should have put instead, or what your favorite video game soundtracks are, feel free to let me know. I'm always curious about that kind of stuff. But as of this second, these are my favorite video game soundtracks. Okay, in no particular order, I guess let's start with Metal Gear Solid, the Twin Snakes soundtrack. This is probably my favorite Metal Gear soundtrack. All the other Metal Gear games have great soundtracks too, but this one's my favorite one. It's just a lot of techno-y kind of music, but very cool, very quick, very exciting. And it's also got some great sneaking around music and stuff because this was a stealth game, but it had a lot of action in it too. It also has some pretty good emotional songs, like the song at the end of the game, "The Best Is Yet to Come." That's a very great song. It's just I think some of the better songs have to deal with the boss fights in the game. So, the boss fight song where you're fighting the Cyborg Ninja is awesome. The song where you're fighting Psycho Mantis is awesome, and just some really, really great songs in this soundtrack. The next one, Halo Combat Evolved. Absolutely a great soundtrack. I can't even imagine playing Halo without this soundtrack. I mean, it is groundbreaking. It is just epic, beautiful, just awesome. Makes you feel like a badass in space. So it's absolutely perfect for the Halo series. And I would say Halo Combat Evolved's got the best soundtrack of the whole series, but it's just absolutely great. Next, Silent Hill 3. Every single Silent Hill game ever made has a great soundtrack. It's crazy. Well, it kind of helps that the producer of the Silent Hill series, I can't remember his name, Kira Yamamoka, I believe, something like that. He actually did the soundtracks for each Silent Hill game up until a couple of years ago. So he was also, he wasn't just the producer of the games, he was also the composer. So that's pretty interesting. And they are just beautiful, terrifying, crazy. You've never heard music like the Silent Hill songs. But if I had to pick one soundtrack in the series, I would go with Silent Hill 3. It's got a lot of feminine kind of songs in it because the main character is a woman, but it's nothing bad. The hometown song near the end of the soundtrack is great. There's a lot of creepy ass songs in there too, so it's just an absolutely great horror soundtrack. Myth 2 Soul Blighter's soundtrack was done by the same guy who did the Halo soundtracks, and this was done a couple of years before the Halo soundtracks, but it's just a great soundtrack any way you look at it. It's a fantasy strategy game, so for it to have this great of a soundtrack is pretty interesting, but it's just absolutely great. Love the songs. It fits perfectly with the game and the world, so it's just absolutely great soundtrack. Next, Valiant Hearts. This is a very emotional soundtrack. In fact, I was listening to a few songs before doing this episode, and I was tearing up. But it's beautiful music, very emotional. Again, goes great with the game. Just absolutely beautiful soundtrack. Saints Row the Third is next. Very cool soundtrack, very fun. Just running around the city listening to all these great songs. Very, very good selection in this game. I remember one level starts off with Kanye West's Power song. You're hanging out of a helicopter about to jump onto a skyscraper and assault the enemy gang's base. I mean, it's just, holy shit. Really, really freaking cool. Next, Mass Effect 1 soundtrack is amazing. I absolutely love this soundtrack. Very different, very unique sounding. The songs are kind of short because the game was kind of done and the soundtrack was done in kind of an old school way where you'd basically have like a bunch of 2 minute long songs, but during the game they would stretch them out, for as long as you were in a certain area, so each level had its own song. So, but in actuality, the songs are only a couple of minutes long, but still great songs, especially the song they play at the end of the game during the credits, M4 Part 2, done by the Canadian band Fonts. Maybe the best song taken from the real world and put into a video game ever. It's absolutely great. Just absolutely perfect for that game. Next, Mass Effect 3's soundtrack. Mass Effect 2 had a couple of good songs, but I didn't think it was nearly as good as Mass Effect 1 and 3's soundtracks. Mass Effect 3, has a lot of emotional songs, a lot of empowering songs, really, really powerful soundtrack. And during the game, they intersplice a bunch of songs from Mass Effect 1 in there too, which is kind of cool. Harkening back to the first Mass Effect game, like when you see a character you haven't seen since the first one, they might play the song that they were playing in the first one when you met that character, so that's pretty cool. Next, Dragon Age Origins has a terrific soundtrack. I absolutely love the soundtrack. Very fantasy-like, very Celtic and stuff, just beautiful. And again, it gets kind of going and here and there with a lot of power and stuff. So it's very, very cool soundtrack. Definitely a great fantasy game soundtrack. Next, I guess we're at number 10. Alice Madness Returns has a very interesting soundtrack. I think the people that made the soundtrack used a lot of like kids' toys and stuff like Jack in the Box, that ganka 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 ganka, and also like little kids' xylophones, I think they're called, those little things you would clank, clank. They incorporate a lot of kids' toys and stuff into the music and stuff, so it is a very interesting sounding soundtrack. Very, very interesting soundtrack. Very unique, and it works very well with the game. Next, the original Medal of Honor game soundtrack. It's just a absolutely great World War II soundtrack, just I would put it right up there with Jerry Goldsmith's Patton soundtrack. I mean, it's just absolutely cool and fun to listen to, and it gets you right back into that World War II mindset, so that's really cool. Next, The Witcher 2 has a very exciting, very cool soundtrack. Definitely a more modern take on the fantasy, themes and stuff, so it's a very, very cool soundtrack. Next, Deadly Premonition is a extremely unique soundtrack. A lot of kind of happy, kind of hokey music in the beginning, but as you go further into the game and into the murder mystery, and as the murders pile up and stuff, the soundtrack gets darker and creepier and, goes right along with the game. So it's a very, very interesting soundtrack. I would definitely recommend you check it out. Next, Oblivion. Absolutely great soundtrack. I like it more than Skyrim's just because I think it's prettier and it's kind of like a dreamy, kind of like a more fantasy, idyllic fantasy world kind of music. It's very, very pretty and just really nice to listen to. Next, Twisted Metal Black. Absolutely great soundtrack. Definitely kind of sounds like God of War's soundtrack a little bit, but kind of has a more faster, kind of more brutal kind of sound to it. I guess picture, a bunch of crazy maniacs with cars and machine guns strapped on the cars trying to kill each other. Definitely sounds like that. And of course, the Rolling Stones Painted Black song during the credits, so that tops it off very nicely. Next, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Absolutely crazy soundtrack, very exciting. Just a lot of techno, dubstep kind of stuff, very crazy, definitely gets you going. I remember when it came out, a lot of people kind of complaining about the music. saying it was too different from the other Metal Gear games, but I'm like, guys, this is, supposed to be completely different. I mean, you're moving as fast as the eye can follow, basically. And it's just absolutely nuts. Of course, they had to have a crazy soundtrack for this game, so it's very interesting soundtrack. Next, Final Fantasy VII soundtrack is absolutely a classic soundtrack. Can't even imagine the world without this soundtrack. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful, epic, powerful, emotional. I mean, it's just beautiful. I kind of prefer the Advent Children's version of it because it's more modern and the music I think is better. I know it's kind of cheating, but whatevs. I mean, it's basically the same soundtrack. And now that those assholes are finally making a Final Fantasy VII remake, I'm sure they're going to probably incorporate the Advent Children versions of the songs into the game a lot more than the original ones. But yeah, I mean, it's got One Winged Angel. That's the song where you fight Sephiroth. I mean, it's just amazing, amazing song. Amazing, amazing soundtrack. Next, Final Fantasy X soundtrack is beautiful, heartwarming, and just, almost kind of tragic too. I mean, it's very, very beautiful soundtrack for a very beautiful game. Next, Dead Space. Now, this game soundtrack, man, is just holy shit. I mean, if you just listen to the music, you're gonna be paranoid. You're gonna be looking behind your shoulder and shit every couple of minutes. I mean, it is just the guy who did it, man. He just had to use some crazy techniques to make something this creepy. I haven't heard a soundtrack this scary since probably Silent Hill 1, maybe. Yeah, just absolutely terrifying, and they have a creepy ass version of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in it that is just terrifying, especially where they put it in the game. You're in a dark room surrounded by a bunch of dead cultists who killed themselves, and you're just walking around very slowly in the dark with your flashlight and your gun raised, and they start playing the song Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, up above the world so far. Just absolutely all you hear is standing up and you're just waiting for something to jump out and kill your ass. So very crazy, very crazy. All right, number 20, last but not least, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, the soundtrack. Now, the difference with what I did here as opposed to what I did with my favorite video game songs is on my video game songs, I only had original music on those, like songs that were made for the game. But on this, I'm just going to incorporate, whatever songs they put in the game, that's the soundtrack. So that's why I have Grand Theft Auto San Andreas in here, because it's got an excellent selection of some of the best songs of the early 1990s and late 80s. So great soundtrack, very very fun to drive a motorcycle through San Andreas listening to just some absolutely great songs. So yeah, it's just a fun soundtrack. If you want to hear some great early 90s songs, can't go wrong with the San Andreas soundtrack. So yeah, there's my top 20 favorite video game soundtracks. Some great music. So check them out. I'm going to be posting links for each soundtrack for YouTube. So check them out.